It is 6 p.m. Thursday, November 30th. I'm here at McGill University where students are holding a rally against a Quebec Superior Court injunction that halted the adoption of a pro-Palestine policy with the McGill Student Union. There are around 200 people here present, chanting and speaking on colonialism, the current genocide going on in Gaza.
Many speakers at the rally took to sharing their thoughts with the demonstrators about their disappointment in McGill's administration for its lack of support for Palestine. There has also been a recent open letter that many student associations, including Independent Jewish Voices McGill and Queer McGill, have signed onto. The letter reads, Dear Provost Manfredi, Principal Siani, and Associate Provost Campbell, and Deputy Provost LeBeau, the undersigned associations represent a coalition of undergraduate and graduate students at McGill deeply concerned with the recent communications from your offices on the genocide in Palestine. We are particularly troubled by the administration's attempts to intimidate students for Palestine Humanitarian Rights McGill, the only Palestinian student group on campus, pursued even as we collectively witness the ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestine by the Israeli military. We join our voice so that 90 McGill University professors, staff, and librarians in condemning the university's recent emails on the ongoing genocide in Palestine. Echoing the October 12th Statement of Solidarity with Palestine and Palestinian Resistance, co-authored by McGill SPHR, we write to affirm our solidarity with Palestine and the Palestinian resistance against over 75 years of Israeli settler colonialism and apartheid. Subject to a long and brutal military occupation, Palestinians' right to resist is enshrined to international law. Moreover, it is this very law that the Israeli military continues to disregard in its current aerial bombing campaign and siege of Gaza Strip, described as posing an imminent genocide by over 800 lawyers, scholars, and practitioners. We stand by our Jewish friends in this moment of grief and mourn the tragic loss of life that has occurred on October 7th, but we reject the collective punishment of Palestinians in retaliation. As Rabbi R.A. Bernstein has explained, right now, our grief and trauma are being directed to war crimes on a colossal scale. Mass murder of civilians and children, population transfer, ethnic cleansing. It doesn't have to be this way. In this moment of unprecedented violence, the trauma inflicted against Palestinians, stroked by the inflammatory, decontextualized media coverage, we were shocked to see McGill use similar polarizing language in its description of ongoing genocide and its condemnation of the SPHR. Media coverage overwhelmingly dehumanizes Palestinians and their supporters as radicalized. Their voices and struggles are being silenced on social media, and as senior administrators, your comments align with these patterns of prejudice and suppression. On October 10th, Provost Manfredi sent a university-wide email condemning SPHR for celebrating recent acts of terror and violence and called the SSMU to revoke SPHR's affiliation with McGill University. Not once has McGill condemned or even mentioned the genocidal campaign on Palestinians by the State of Israel, despite its explicit condemnation of violence against Israelis by Hamas. Instead, the administration has deliberately painted the ongoing ethnic cleansing and widely documented system of settler colonialism in Palestine as depoliticized religious issues that can be solved through appeals against Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. In doing so, the McGill administration again ignores decades of colonial occupation, violence, and apartheid. After over a month of near silence on the rising Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian, and anti-Arab racism experienced by Palestine advocates at McGill and throughout wider Montreal community, on November 9th, Principal Sani escalated his attacks against Palestinian advocates in the McGill community by directly accusing them of anti-Semitism. In total disregard of the context and source of the image in question, from a 2004 documentary Discordia about Concordia students' rejection of President Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to their campus, Principal Sani chose once again to traffic the tired discourse that equates any kind of Palestinian advocacy with anti-Semitism. In doing so, Principal Siani's latest email, sent just a few hours before the planned rally, clearly intended to silence Palestinian advocacy on campus by dissuading community participation through threats of disciplinary action. Even more troubling is the chilling effect that these blanket accusations of anti-Semitism have been drawing vital attention away from the very real and alarming incidents of anti-Semitism rising throughout Montreal. We stand firmly by all Jewish members of our community feeling the fear and trauma associated with this resurgence of hate. We pledge to support them in identifying, reporting, and eradicating all forms of anti-Semitic prejudice, which we recognize as one of the many forms of religious, ethnic, and racial discrimination that Palestine activists work to dismantle. Principal Siani, it is precisely these irresponsible and substantiated accusations that exuberate existing tensions on campus. Not a flyer encouraging members of our community to join a peaceful event in support of Palestinian human rights. What we find to be deplorable is not a poster featuring a photo of Montreal student activism, but the Israeli military's ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestine, which has now claimed the lives of over 1,100 innocent people and displaced more than 1 million Gazans in just 5 weeks, all of which you have yet to condemn. For McGill's Palestinian students and their allies, the administration's recent emails have directly contributed to a renewed sense of fear, alienation, retribution. Historically, students expressing solidarity with Palestine have been targeted, surveyed, harassed, and otherwise discriminated against. Recent communications have further polarized within the student body, where any discussion of Israeli action against Palestinians is seen as inherently abhorrent, to use the provost's own terms. This sets a distressing precedent of curtailing dissenting student voices and directly endangers Palestinian activists and supporters who will have to bear the consequences of this reckless vilification. In fact, this most recent episode of Palestinian suppression stands in stark contrast to sentiments the provost expressed just last year in an op-ed that they rightly affirmed academic freedom as a cornerstone of university life. Over centuries, it has allowed scholars to challenge received wisdom without fear of institutional censure. As students of McGill, we agree academic freedom is central to the very functioning of healthy academic life. We all, Palestinians and their allies, have the right to participate in the vigorous, evidence-based, and respectful debate and inquiry, even on the controversial and morally diversive topics that the university proclaims to uphold as part of its mission. Now more than ever, we need to hear the voices of Palestinians. We reject attempts by the administration to instill fear and silence our calls for justice. With this in mind, we reiterate and endorse the following list of concrete measures put forth by the SPHR as the first steps towards correcting the course of university's recent communications on Palestine and addressing the urgent need to support and protect its Palestinian students and allies. That McGill's provost and Principal Siani issue a public statement denouncing Israel's genocide bombing campaign against the people of Gaza and provide concrete measures to address the personal toll that these atrocities are taking on Palestinian students at McGill, and that McGill administration revoke its threats against the SPHR McGill and against the SSMU. That McGill divests from corporations complicit in Israeli settler colonial apartheid, and that McGill cease its exchange program with Israeli institutions and cut ties with current and future Zionist donors. We trust that the university will reaffirm its stated commitment to academic freedom by reversing any punitive measures against the SPHR McGill. We hope that you will join us in responding to the worldwide calls of solidarity with the Palestinian struggle.
78.7% of 8,401 students at McGill have voted in favor of adopting a policy that calls upon McGill to cut ties with organizations and individuals that are, in quotes, complicit in genocide, ethnic cleansing, settler colonialism, and apartheid in Palestine. Just recently, the students that initially were gathered out in front of the McMain building have entered the University Center building at 3480 McTavish. The goal was to disrupt a meeting of the board of directors as well as a student government meeting, and the meeting has been adjourned because of this disruption. Condanspa, Local 514.